He was a black single father living quietly, hoping only to keep his job and raise his son. She was his new boss, cold, wealthy, untouchable. Until one afternoon, while cleaning her office, he saw the ring on her finger. A worn copper ring clumsily wrapped around a piece of pale blue sea glass. His heart stopped. 28 years ago, he had made that ring for a little girl at the orphanage and told her, "When we grow up, I'll marry you." Does she remember that promise? Harry Thompson had learned one rule in his 38 years of living invisible men: survive longer. He moved through the halls of Whitmore Industries like a shadow, his cleaning cart rolling silently across marble floors that cost more than his annual salary. The night shift suited him perfectly. No executives asking questions, no security guards making small talk, just empty offices and the quiet hum of machines. The job paid nearly double what he had earned at his previous position. When the agency called with the offer, Harry almost hung up, certain it was a scam. But the woman on the phone explained the requirements clearly. Work after hours. Avoid contact with the CEO. Leave no trace. The money would hit his account every 2 weeks like clockwork. He needed that money, every cent of it. Back home in a cramped apartment where the radiator coughed more than it heated, his 8-year-old son Isaiah was waiting. The boy had been born with a condition that slowly clouded his vision. Without surgery, the doctors said he would be legally blind before his 10th birthday. The procedure cost more than Harry could save in 5 years of regular work, so he became invisible. He liked it that way. 3 weeks into the job, Harry noticed things about the CEO's office that others might have missed. A children's book sat on the shelf between leather-bound legal volumes, its spine cracked from years of reading. A crude drawing hung in an expensive frame near the window, the kind of artwork only a child would create. And there was a scent that lingered in the room long after everyone had gone. Jasmine, faint but unmistakable. Harry knew that smell. He had not encountered it in 28 years, but his body remembered before his mind could catch up. His hands trembled slightly as he dusted the bookshelf. Kara Carter was a name that appeared in business magazines and financial news. Youngest female CEO in the company's history. Known for her precision, her distance, her absolute control over every aspect of her professional life. Employees whispered that she never smiled, never raised her voice, never showed weakness of any kind. Harry had seen her photograph in the lobby. A beautiful woman with sharp eyes and an expression that revealed nothing. He felt no connection to that image. The Kara Carter of magazine covers belonged to a world he could not touch. Then came the night everything changed. He was finishing his rounds on the executive floor later than usual because a spill in the conference room had taken extra time to clean. The building should have been empty. He pushed his cart toward the CEO's office, already reaching for his key card, when the door swung open from inside. She stood there in the doorway, briefcase in hand, clearly surprised to find someone in the hall. For a moment, neither of them moved. Harry lowered his eyes immediately, the instinct born from years of knowing his place. He stepped aside to let her pass, mumbling an apology for being in her way. But as she walked by, something caught the light. On her right hand, she wore a ring. Not the kind of jewelry a woman of her status would typically choose. This ring was made of copper wire tarnished with age, wrapped inexpertly around a small piece of glass. Sea glass. Pale blue, worn smooth by years of waves and sand. Harry forgot how to breathe. He knew that ring. He knew every awkward twist of the wire, every imperfection in the metal. He had made it himself 28 years ago with hands too small and clumsy to do the job properly. He had given it to a girl with sad eyes and a laugh that sounded like music. The memory crashed over him like a wave he had been running from his entire life. St. Christopher's Home for Children sat on the edge of a town that had forgotten it existed. Harry arrived there at age 7 after his mother's death left him with nowhere else to go. The other children were cruel in the way that abandoned children often are, finding power in hurting those weaker than themselves. But there was one girl who never joined their cruelty. Her name was Evie. She was small for her age, with tangled hair and a habit of humming songs she made up herself. She smelled like the jasmine that grew wild behind the dormitory building. They became inseparable. Two broken children finding shelter in each other when the world offered none. Harry protected her from the older kids. She taught him to read using that same children's book he had seen on the CEO's shelf. At night, when the dormitory grew cold, they would whisper stories to each other until sleep finally came. On the day before his 10th birthday, Harry found a piece of copper wire near the maintenance shed. He spent hours bending it into shape, wrapping it around a fragment of blue sea glass he had discovered on a rare trip to the beach. The ring was ugly. He knew that even as he made it. But it was all he had to give. He found Evie sitting alone in their usual spot, a corner of the yard, hidden from the supervisor's view. He placed the ring in her palm and spoke words that felt too big for his small body. "When we grow up, I'm going to marry you. I promise." She had smiled, then really smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger even though it was far too large. They made plans that night. Ridiculous plans. They would run away together when they turned 18. They would find a house by the ocean. They would never be alone again. 3 days later, a wealthy couple came to the orphanage. They wanted a girl. Young, quiet, presentable. They chose Evie. Harry remembered watching from the window as a black car pulled away from the building. Evie's face pressed against the rear glass, her mouth forming words he could not hear. He never saw her again. The orphanage told him nothing. Her records were sealed. Her new family had requested complete separation from her past. Even her name would be changed. They said so she could start fresh. Harry waited anyway. For years, he watched the entrance of St. Christopher's, convinced she would come back for him. She never did. Now, standing in a hallway that smelled of expensive cleaning products and corporate ambition, Harry watched Kara Carter walk toward the elevator. The ring on her finger caught the light one more time before she disappeared around the corner. His legs felt weak. His heart hammered against his ribs with enough force to crack them. It could not be her. The odds were impossible. Evie had vanished into a world of wealth and privilege that Harry could never reach. She probably did not even remember the scared little boy who made her a ring from garbage. But the jasmine, the children's book, the drawing in the frame, and that ring, that impossible, unmistakable ring. Harry leaned against the wall and pressed his palm over his eyes. He had two choices now. He could stay silent, keep his head down, collect his paychecks, and save his son's vision. Or he could chase a ghost from his childhood and risk everything he had built. Isaiah's face flashed through his mind. 8 years old, glasses too thick for his small face, already struggling to read the books he loved so much. Harry chose silence. But that night, for the first time in years, he did not sleep. The sleepless nights continued for 2 weeks. Harry went through the motions of his life, cleaning offices, cooking dinner for Isaiah, helping with homework, but his mind remained trapped in that hallway, watching the copper ring catch the light over and over again. He told himself to forget. The woman in the elevator was Kara Carter, CEO of a billion-dollar company. She had probably bought that ring at some antique store, attracted to its unusual design. The jasmine in her office was just a coincidence. Rich people liked exotic scents. The children's book meant nothing, but every night when he entered her office to clean, the evidence surrounded him. The drawing in the frame showed 2 stick figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. In the corner, written in a child's uneven handwriting, were the words, "Harry and Evie forever." He remembered making that drawing. He remembered giving it to her the day before the copper wire ring. She had kept it. For 28 years, she had kept a crayon drawing made by an orphan boy who promised to marry her. Kara, meanwhile, had begun reviewing the security footage from the executive floor. She told herself it was routine a CEO should know who had access to her private space, but she found herself watching the same clips repeatedly. The cleaning man moved through her office with unusual care, adjusting items he had no reason to touch. He lingered near the bookshelf where she kept her childhood treasures. Once the camera caught him holding the children's book, his fingers tracing the cracked spine with something that looked like recognition. She had searched for Harry Thompson for 15 years after leaving St. Christopher's. Her adoptive parents, the Carters, had forbidden any contact with her past. They gave her a new name, new clothes, new schools where no one knew she had once been an orphan. They erased Evie completely and built Kara in her place. But they could not erase the ring. She had hidden it so well that even their thorough inspection of her belongings missed it. She wore it in secret through boarding school, through college, through her rise in the corporate world. When her adoptive parents died in a car accident 8 years ago, she finally put it on her finger openly. No one dared ask about it. No one except her. The records from St. Christopher's had been destroyed in a fire 6 years after she left. She hired private investigators, searched public records, followed every lead she could find. Harry Thompson was a common name. There were hundreds of them across the country. None of them were her Harry. She had given up hope long ago. The ring became a memorial to something she had lost, rather than a promise she expected to keep. Then the security footage showed a man who moved through her office like he belonged there. A man who touched her things with the gentleness of someone handling precious memories. A man whose face, when the camera caught it, clearly carried echoes of the boy who once made her feel safe in a place where safety did not exist. She was afraid to hope. 28 years of disappointment had taught her that hope was dangerous. So instead of confronting him directly, she decided to test him. The changes in her office began subtly. Harry noticed them immediately. One evening, he found a small radio on her desk, tuned to a station that played old songs. As he worked, a melody drifted through the speakers, a song about 2 children running away to find the sea. Evie used to hum that song while they sat in their hidden corner of the orphanage yard. The next week, the jasmine scent grew stronger, not the faint trace he had noticed before, but a deliberate presence as if someone had placed fresh flowers nearby. He searched the office and found a small vase of jasmine blooms on the windowsill. Then came the photograph. It appeared one night in a silver frame beside her computer monitor. The image showed the garden behind St. Christopher's, overgrown and wild, with jasmine vines climbing the back fence. Harry had never seen a photograph of that place, but he recognized every detail. The broken bench where they used to sit, the crooked tree they had tried to climb, the patch of dirt where they buried a time capsule filled with their most precious possessions. His hands shook as he stared at the image. This was not coincidence. This was not decoration. Someone was speaking to him in a language only 2 people in the world could understand. He wanted to respond. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to find her, to ask if she remembered to finish the conversation that had been interrupted 28 years ago. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Isaiah's face, his son who needed surgery that cost more money than Harry had ever seen in one place, his son who depended on him to make safe choices. A single father did not have the luxury of chasing ghosts. At home, Isaiah noticed the change in his father. The boy was perceptive in ways that sometimes startled Harry. He saw things that other children missed: the tension in his father's shoulders, the faraway look in his eyes, the way he sometimes stopped in the middle of a task, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. One evening, Harry came home later than usual. He found Isaiah at the kitchen table, bent over a piece of paper with crayons scattered around him. The boy looked up when his father entered. "Dad, are you sad?" Harry forced a smile. "Why do you ask that? Because you look like me when I'm sad, but don't want to say it." The observation cut deeper than Isaiah could know. Harry sat down across from his son and looked at the drawing spread between them. 3 figures stood together under a bright sun: a tall man, a small boy, and a woman with no face. "Who's that?" Harry asked, pointing to the faceless figure. Isaiah shrugged. I don't know yet. I haven't met her, but I hope someday you'll find her and then I can draw her face. Harry stared at the empty oval where a face should be. His son had drawn a space for someone who did not exist in their lives, a mother, a partner, a presence that would make their small family complete. Why do you think I'm looking for someone? Because you always look at the door like you're waiting, and sometimes at night I hear you talking in your sleep. You say a name. It sounds like a girl's name. Harry's throat tightened. He had not realized he talked in his sleep. He wondered how much his son had heard, how many secrets had slipped out in the vulnerable hours of darkness. It's an old friend, he said finally. Someone I knew a long time ago. Isaiah considered this with the seriousness of a child who had learned to think carefully before speaking. Did you lose her? Yes. Do you think you'll find her again? Harry looked at his son, at the thick glasses, the hopeful eyes, the small body that carried so much courage, despite everything life had already thrown at him. This child was his responsibility, his purpose, his reason for playing it safe. I don't know, he admitted. Some people, once you lose them, you can't get them back. Isaiah returned to his drawing, adding yellow rays to the sun. Without looking up, he said, But what if she's looking for you too? Then you'd both be lost, but together. The words stayed with Harry long after Isaiah had gone to bed. The company's annual gala arrived on a cold Saturday night in December. Harry had been assigned to the support staff carrying equipment, managing the coat check, helping with cleanup. It was the kind of visible work he normally avoided, but the event paid triple overtime, and Isaiah's surgery fund needed every dollar. The ballroom glittered with wealth Harry could barely comprehend. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. Women in gowns that cost more than his car laughed at jokes told by men whose watches could pay his rent for a year. He moved through the crowd like a ghost, collecting empty glasses, wiping spills, staying invisible. Then he saw her. Kara Carter stood near the center of the room, surrounded by executives and investors competing for her attention. She wore a black dress that made her look like she had been carved from the night itself. On her right hand, catching the chandelier light with every gesture, the copper ring gleamed. Harry could not look away. The girl he had known, small, tangled-haired, singing made-up songs, had become this creature of power and precision. But something in the way she held herself told him that Evie was still there, buried beneath the armor she had built to survive. He was so focused on watching her that he did not notice the man approaching until it was too late. The collision happened in slow motion. A heavyset guest, drunk and careless, stumbled backward into Harry. The tray of champagne glasses Harry carried went flying. Glass shattered across the marble floor. Golden liquid splashed onto the man's expensive shoes. For a moment, the immediate area fell silent. Guests turned to stare. The drunk man's face twisted with anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" His voice carried across the ballroom, drawing more attention. "Can't you watch where you're going?" Harry dropped to his knees, immediately gathering broken glass with his bare hands. "I'm sorry, sir. Let me clean this up." "Sorry doesn't fix my $1,200 shoes." The man's voice grew louder, feeding on the audience. "This is exactly what happens when they hire people who don't belong in places like this." The implication was clear. Harry felt the familiar burn of humiliation, the weight of eyes judging him not for his actions, but for his skin. He kept his head down, kept gathering glass, kept silent. He had survived worse. He would survive this. But the drunk man was not finished. "Look at me when I'm talking to you, boy." The word landed like a slap. Around them, the crowd shifted uncomfortably, but no one intervened. Harry's hands trembled as he continued cleaning. A shard of glass cut his palm. He barely felt it. Then someone pushed through the circle of onlookers. In her haste to reach Harry, Kara's hand caught on the arm of another guest. The copper ring slipped from her finger and fell to the marble floor, rolling through the spilled champagne until it stopped directly in front of Harry. Time ceased to exist. Harry stared at the ring lying inches from his bleeding hand. He knew every scratch on its surface, every bend in the copper wire, every flaw in the piece of sea glass at its center. He had made this ring in a dusty corner of an orphanage workshop, believing with the pure faith of childhood that it would somehow keep them connected forever. Slowly, as if moving through water, he picked it up. When he raised his eyes, Kara stood directly before him. The crowd, the noise, the drunk man, all of it faded to nothing. There was only her face, and in her eyes he saw the same shock, the same recognition, the same impossible hope that must have been written across his own features. Kara turned to the drunk man. Her voice carried the cold authority of someone who had learned to command rooms full of powerful people. "You are insulting a member of my staff, in my building, at my event." The man sputtered. "I was simply pointing out, you were being a bully and a bigot, Mr. Harrison, and you are no longer welcome here." She signaled to security without breaking eye contact with the man. "Please escort Mr. Harrison out. His company's partnership proposal will be declined first thing Monday morning." The man's face went pale. He tried to protest, but security had already taken his arms. The crowd parted to let them through, whispers spreading like wildfire. Kara turned back to Harry. Around them, guests pretended to return to their conversations while watching from the corners of their eyes. Harry rose to his feet, still holding the ring. His palm was bleeding. His heart was breaking and mending at the same time. He placed the ring in her hand. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, meant only for her. "I'm sorry I made you wait so long, Evie." Her composure cracked for just a moment. Her eyes glistened. She closed her fingers around the ring and pressed it against her chest, as if trying to push it directly into her heart. "You came back," she breathed. "I never left. I just couldn't find you." Someone nearby cleared their throat. The spell broke. Kara straightened her spine, rebuilt. Her mask became the CEO again. "Come to my office tomorrow evening," she said loud enough for others to hear. "We need to discuss your future with this company." Then she walked away, and Harry was left standing in a puddle of champagne and broken glass, feeling more whole than he had in 28 years. He did not go to her office the next evening, or the evening after that. The gala had changed nothing. The hope in Kara's eyes had changed nothing. The ring, the impossible, beautiful, damning ring, had changed nothing. He was still Harry Thompson, a cleaning man with a dying bank account and a son who needed surgery. She was still Kara Carter, a CEO, whose world operated on rules he did not understand. The distance between them was not measured in years or silence. It was measured in everything he could not give her. What would happen if he went to her? She would learn about Isaiah. She would learn about the cramped apartment, the mounting debts, the nights he worked, double shifts just to keep the lights on. She would see the life he had built. Not a life of ambition or achievement, but a life of survival. He had promised to marry her. As a child, he had believed he could become someone worthy of that promise. Instead, he had become a man who cleaned other people's offices and counted pennies in the grocery store checkout line. Kara deserved better. She deserved a man who could stand beside her, not one who would drag her down into his struggles. If he loved her, and God help him, he still loved her, then the kindest thing he could do was disappear. He wrote the resignation letter on a Tuesday night after Isaiah had fallen asleep. The words came slowly, each one feeling like a small death. Personal reasons. Effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity. He did not mention the ring. He did not mention the jasmine, the photograph, the song on the radio. He sealed the envelope and placed it in the outgoing mail before he could change his mind. Kara received the letter on Wednesday morning. She read it once, then again, then a third time, searching for hidden meaning in the sparse words. He was leaving. After everything, the gala, the recognition, the moment when their eyes had met and 28 years had collapsed into nothing, he was choosing to leave. She could have stopped him. A woman in her position had resources, influence, the ability to track someone down and demand answers. She could find his address, show up at his door, force a conversation he clearly did not want to have. But she understood what he was doing. She recognized the pattern because she had seen it before. When they were children, Harry had always put himself between her and danger. He took punches meant for her. He gave her his food when rations were short. He sacrificed his own comfort to protect hers over and over, never asking for anything in return. He was doing it again. He believed he was protecting her by walking away, shielding her from whatever complications his life would bring to hers. He did not understand that his absence was the only thing that had ever truly hurt her. She could not force him to stay. She could not make him see that his worth had never been measured by his job or his bank account. She could not undo 28 years of a world that had taught him he was less than he was. But she could find him. She could try. Kara Carter had not become the youngest CEO in company history by accepting defeat easily. She pulled his personnel file and found an address on the south side of the city, a neighborhood she had never visited in a world she had been raised to forget she came from. She would go to him. Not as a CEO demanding answers, but as the girl who had worn his ring for nearly 3 decades, waiting for a promise she had never stopped believing in. The address led Kara to a part of the city she had only seen from highway overpasses. Row after row of aging apartment buildings lined streets where streetlights flickered uncertainly and graffiti-covered walls that had not been repainted in decades. Her driver hesitated at the entrance to the neighborhood, but she told him to continue. She found the building easily enough, a 5-story structure with a broken front door and mailboxes hanging open in the lobby. The elevator had an out-of-order sign that looked permanently attached. She climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, her heels echoing in the concrete stairwell, and stopped outside apartment 412. Through the thin door, she could hear voices, a child's voice high and curious, and then Harry, his tone gentle in a way she remembered from their childhood. "Dad, why did you quit your job?" "I told you, buddy, I'm going to find something else." "But you liked that job. You said the building was really tall and the floors were shiny like mirrors." Kara pressed her hand against the door, feeling the vibration of their conversation through the wood. "Sometimes grown-ups have to make changes, Isaiah. It doesn't mean anything bad." "But you're sad. I can tell. You've been sad since you came home that night with blood on your hand." The night of the gala. The broken glass. Harry had cut his palm picking up the pieces, and apparently his son had noticed. "I'm not sad," Harry said, but even through the door, Kara could hear the lie in his voice. "I'm just thinking about things. About the lady, Silence. I hear you at night, Dad. You say her name sometimes. Evie." Kara's breath caught in her throat. She had come here with a plan to confront Harry, to demand an explanation, to force him to see that running away solved nothing. But standing outside his door, listening to his son speak her name with innocent curiosity, she realized she was not ready for this. She turned and walked back down the stairs. Her heels made too much noise. Someone on the 2nd floor opened their door to stare at her, a woman in expensive clothes descending into a world where expensive clothes did not belong. Kara did not care. She needed time to think. 3 days passed before she returned. This time she left her driver at the edge of the neighborhood and walked the final blocks alone. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a plain sweater, flat shoes. The copper ring stayed on her finger as always. She found Isaiah before she found Harry. The boy sat alone in the small courtyard behind the apartment building, bent over a piece of paper with crayons scattered around him. His glasses were thick, his movements careful and deliberate as he drew. He did not look up when she approached, but he spoke without surprise, as if he had been expecting company. "You're not from around here." Kara sat down on the bench beside him, leaving a respectful distance between them. How can you tell? You walk different, like you're not sure where to put your feet. Isaiah looked up, then studying her with eyes that seemed to see more than his glasses should allow. Are you lost? Maybe a little. The boy nodded, as if this made perfect sense. He returned his attention to the drawing. It's okay. I get lost sometimes too, but Dad always finds me. Kara looked at the paper in front of him. 3 figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun, a tall man, a small boy, and a woman. The woman had no face. That's a beautiful drawing, she said. Who are they? Isaiah pointed to each figure in turn. That's my dad. That's me. And that's... He trailed off, frowning at the empty oval where features should be. I don't know yet. I haven't met her. Haven't... Why did you draw someone you haven't met? Because Dad's waiting for her. He doesn't say it, but I know. Isaiah picked up a blue crayon and began adding details to the sky. He talks about her in his sleep. He's been waiting a really long time, I think. Kara's heart felt like it was being squeezed by invisible hands. This child, this small, perceptive, beautiful child, had drawn a space in his family for someone he had never seen. He had created room for her before she even knew he existed. Can I ask you something? She said carefully. Isaiah shrugged. Sure. Does your dad ever talk about when he was young, about where he grew up? Sometimes. The boy switched to a green crayon. He lived in a place with lots of other kids. He says he wasn't very happy there, but there was one person who made it better. A girl. He says she was the nicest person he ever met. What happened to her? She went away. Someone took her to a different family. Isaiah's hand stopped moving. He looked up at Kara with those 2 seeing eyes. Dad said she probably forgot about him. But I don't think she did. If someone loved you that much, you wouldn't forget. Kara could not speak. The words stuck in her throat like stones. Isaiah tilted his head, examining her face with new interest. You have pretty eyes. They're kind of sad, though. Like Dad's. Before Kara could respond, footsteps approached from behind. She turned and saw Harry standing at the edge of the courtyard, a bag of groceries in his arms. His face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, fear, confusion, and finally, something that looked like resignation. Isaiah, go inside. The boy gathered his crayons, quickly accustomed to obeying that tone. As he passed his father, he whispered something that Kara could not hear. Harry's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. When Isaiah had disappeared into the building, Harry set down the groceries and walked slowly toward the bench where Kara sat. He did not sit beside her. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, as if preparing to defend himself against an attack. You shouldn't be here. Then where should I be? Kara stood to face him. Waiting in my office for a resignation letter, checking security footage, and hoping for a glimpse of you. Harry looked away. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She took a step closer. 28 years, Harry. I've been carrying that ring for 28 years. Do you know how many times I searched for you? How many private investigators I hired? How many dead ends I followed? I'm not what you were looking for. His voice was rough, almost angry. Look around you, Evie. This is my life. A broken apartment in a broken neighborhood. A son who needs surgery I can barely afford. I clean offices for a living. I'm not the person who can stand next to you. I don't need someone to stand next to me. I need you. You don't know what you need. Harry finally met her eyes, and she saw the depth of his pain, years of believing he was not enough, decades of watching the world confirm his worst fears about himself. I'm not that boy anymore. I can't promise you a house by the ocean. I can't even promise I'll be able to pay my rent next month. Kara reached into her pocket and pulled out the copper ring. She had taken it off for this moment, knowing that the next time she put it on, everything would be different. She took Harry's hand, the same hand that had been cut at the gala, now healed into a thin white scar, and placed the ring in his palm. You gave me this when we had nothing. When we were 2 children with no family, no future, No reason to believe things would ever get better. Her voice trembled but did not break. This ring was never about money or houses or standing next to anyone. It was about not being alone. That's all I've ever wanted. Someone who wouldn't let me be alone. Harry stared at the ring in his hand. His fingers closed around it slowly. I have a son, he said. He comes first. Always. I can't bring someone into his life who might leave. I'm not going to leave. Everyone leaves eventually. Kara shook her head. I didn't leave. I was taken. And I've spent my whole life trying to find my way back. She stepped closer, close enough to touch him if she dared. I found you. After 28 years, I found you. Do you really think I'm going to walk away now? Harry's defenses were crumbling. She could see it in the way his shoulders dropped, the way his breathing changed, the way his eyes kept returning to the ring as if it contained the answer to every question he had ever asked. Isaiah drew a picture, he said quietly. 3 people. Me, him, and a woman with no face. I know. He showed me. He said he was waiting for me to find her. Kara smiled through the tears that had begun to fall. Did you find her? Harry looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and touched her face gently, carefully, as if she might dissolve at any moment. I found her, he whispered. I've been finding her over and over again, since I was 10 years old. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 28 years, neither of them was alone. 1 year later, Harry stood in a kitchen that smelled like pancakes and Saturday morning. The apartment was different now, larger, brighter in a building where the elevator worked, and the neighbors smiled when they passed in the halls. Not a mansion, but not a place where he had to count every penny either. Kara had insisted they find something together, something that belonged to both of them, rather than to the lives they had lived apart. Isaiah ran through the room, his glasses replaced by lighter frames that no longer slid down his nose. The surgery had been successful. His vision would never be perfect, but it was good enough to see the world clearly, to read books without straining to draw pictures with all the detail he had always imagined. Speaking of pictures, a new one hung on the refrigerator. 3 figures beneath a yellow sun. A tall man, a small boy, and a woman with a face now. She had brown eyes and dark hair and a smile that Isaiah had spent hours perfecting. Kara entered the kitchen, still in her pajamas, her hair uncombed. On her right hand, she wore a ring. Not the old copper ring that once sat in a glass case on the mantel, preserved like the treasure it was. This new ring was also copper, also wrapped around a piece of blue sea glass, but now there was a second piece beside it, smaller, green. The green one is for Isaiah, Harry had explained when he gave it to her. So you know you're getting both of us. Package deal. She had cried then. She cried now, too, watching Isaiah attempt to flip a pancake and failing gloriously, sending batter across the counter, while Harry laughed and grabbed a towel. You're supposed to flip it fast, Isaiah protested. That's what you said. I said confident, not fast. There's a difference. What's the difference? Harry demonstrated, sending a perfect pancake spinning into the air and catching it cleanly. Confidence means you know it's going to work. Speed just means you're scared it won't. Isaiah considered this wisdom with the seriousness of a 9-year-old philosopher. So I should just believe the pancake will flip. Believe in yourself. The pancake will follow. Kara sat down at the table and watched them, her boys, her family, the life she had stopped believing was possible somewhere around her 14th birthday, when she realized that happy endings were for other people. But here it was, imperfect and messy and covered in pancake batter. Real in a way that fairy tales never were. Harry caught her eye across the kitchen. He smiled the same smile she remembered from childhood, the one that had made her feel safe in a place where safety did not exist. What are you thinking about? He asked. Kara looked at the ring on her finger, the drawing on the refrigerator, the boy who was now attempting his second pancake flip with slightly better results. "I'm thinking about a promise," she said. "One that took 28 years to keep." Harry walked over and kissed the top of her head. "Was it worth the wait?" She pulled him down for a proper kiss, the kind that made Isaiah groan and cover his eyes. Every single day. The copper ring gleamed in the morning light, not perfect, but whole, not flawless, but complete. Some promises, it turned out, were worth waiting a lifetime to keep. Thank you so much for staying with Harry, Kara, and Isaiah until the very end. Their story reminds us that love doesn't care about job titles or bank accounts. It only asks for courage and patience. If this story touched your heart, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel so we can share more stories like this together. And I'm really curious, have you ever made a promise to someone that took years to keep? Or maybe you're still waiting for someone from your past? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, your stories often move me just as much as the ones I tell. See you in the next story.